Hi, and thank you, Mila. I am the executive director of Global Chamber Querétaro, uh, and I'm been in Global Chamber for the last couple years now. Absolutely love this, and I've had the opportunity to lead this panel for, I would say, the last 3 or 4 months, and it's been a complete joy. So let me jump in, and we have kind of a format that we're using. And the first part of that format is going to be a speaker. We have a prime spotlight that really what I like to do, I think a lot of us are leading businesses, have our own companies, do a lot of consulting. And so we like to bring speakers and panelists to the table that can give us insight, give us tools, resources to help us do business and life better. And so first of all, if you're interested in being a spotlight, please reach out to me. I'll put my chat information and LinkedIn and everything in the chat so that you can contact me. And then the other thing that we do is we do kind of a round robin type of thing. We'll have the prime spotlight, we'll ask some questions, then we'll promote our businesses and our services and see how we can collaborate and work together. And then if there's time left, then we like to kind of just open it up and find out what women are doing, if there's some struggles, if there's some um, tools that you found useful, then we kind of open it up to share and collaborate and work that way. So I am so excited to introduce you to Anna from Global ERG Network. She has been amazing. I met her in Global Chamber and we instantly hit it off and kind of went offline and started having conversations. And now we're just collaborating and looking at all kinds of things that we can do together. And I love her perspective. I don't know how many of you are building teams and working with youth, but I'm 45 years old. And the new dynamic of business today and working with the younger generation, while I absolutely love it, I also want to pull my hair out. And I say that lovingly because I have 6 children. Okay. So my kids are in that age range too. But it is such a new dynamic to work with. And I wanted to bring this to the table so that we could talk about it. Anna, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to hear what you have planned.
Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. It's great to meet everyone. Thanks so much for jumping on today. As Sapelli mentioned, we met through Global Chamber. I would encourage you, like, make those connections, reach out to people on LinkedIn, set up a coffee chat. And some people you'll click with and some you won't, and that's okay. But it's just great to really take full advantage of this amazing organization. And for me, I have met so many people in completely different industries, and that's been one of my favorite things because we can find that those common threads across our industries and generational dynamics and the challenges that we're facing related to generations is one of those common threads that is happening every organization, every industry, every geography. It looks and feels a little bit different, and we'll talk about what that means globally and what that may look like in your region or in your organization. But the challenge of the dynamics remains the same. So let's see. We'll see if I can share my screen here. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. Um, So just wanted to share a couple of thoughts as we talk. This work is it's more than just getting along with each other. And also it is about finding ways to better get along with each other. And we know that if we feel like we belong in a place, and that means we are connected, we're informed, we are valued, that we're able to do our best work. And so if I come into my company and I feel like the people that I'm working with don't care what I think because I'm 50 now and everybody else at the company is 22 and my opinions don't matter, then I'm probably not going to put forth my best work. and I'm not going to be able to produce and create and contribute in a way that's meaningful. And similarly, if I'm a newer employee coming into an organization with a bunch of tenured colleagues, and it's pretty clear they think I'm just some kid that doesn't have anything to offer, then I probably won't offer it. And I probably won't stick around for a long time if I can see that what I'm bringing is not valued. So this is something that is needed across all generations. But it is a true risk. As I said, it's not just getting along. This is a retention risk. We know that it costs a ton of money to hire and train employees. And depending on your organization and your industry, the ramp to proficiency and the ramp to success could be 6 weeks, it could be 6 months. And the cost that you're pouring into employees to train and prepare them is huge. And being able to keep people for longer periods of time and then transfer that knowledge when you can't is really important. So creating some generational um, value and recognition of these dynamics can also reduce some of that turnover risk. But it creates leadership pipelines. We are so if you go to any generational workshops, you're probably going to hear them say something like, for the first time ever, we have 5 generations in the workforce. And, it's probably true, but it's not. What I think is more interesting is for the first time ever, we are at a period of time in which we are reliant upon younger generations to teach us skills as older people. Historically, knowledge was always passed down from the elders to the youngers. And that's not the position we're in anymore. Younger people are creating the technology, they're shaping it, they're changing it, they're building it. And I mean, well, just quick, let's do a quick emoji or like a reaction. How many people have learned something from a younger person in the last 2 months?
Everybody does.
It's my daughter and I are consistently doing like phone tutorials when we go to have dinner at my parents' house. How do you attach the thing, or how do you send the thing, or how do you find the thing? And so that is new. We have to rely upon our younger generations. And so it really behooves us in a variety of ways to create to create pipelines to transfer that knowledge. When you think about, there's a great story around the Apollo, and we recently had this amazing Artemis launch, and I hope you got to see some of it. It certainly was inspiring in some powerful ways. One of the reasons it took so long for us to get back there was because the knowledge was literally lost. The people that had done some of the building of the components of Apollo were gone. They were no longer working there. They were no longer accessible, and they literally didn't know how to do it. And so I'll encourage you to think about your organization today, or think about the organizations you're consulting with or advising, and how many people have a single owner of a process? Like there's one person in the company that knows how to do a thing, and that person has been doing the XYZ reports for 13 years, and they're the only person that knows how to do it. And if that person left, that report is gone. You are literally having to completely recreate it from scratch because nobody knows how to do it, because that one person owned it for so long and never trained anybody else. And you love them because they're your expert and you're so grateful for them, but they're going to leave someday. It also is not doing any favors for your younger employees, and your whether younger or newer. And let's clarify and qualify. Sometimes your new employees are not necessarily younger by age. They need that knowledge. They need to know the organizational trends, the things you've seen over the last few decades, the lessons learned the hard way. And we need to share those on purpose with each other. So let's take a quick snapshot of the generations. Many of I don't know how many people are US based and are outside the US, but it is important to acknowledge that the generational labels are different in different regions. And because generations are shaped based on the cultural and social events that happen in a particular region. And so, as you can, if we were to correlate this with, for instance, a elections timeline in these various countries, we would probably see some really strong correlations in the social movements and the various activities that were happening um, environmentally, politically, socially in the company and not companies in the generations. One of the interesting things is while the labels are different, the characteristics are very similar. So for, those that are labeled as baby boomers in the US, those sort of characteristics that they may exhibit of kind of resilience, the expectation that you get in a job and you keep your head down and you work hard, you don't go over your boss's head to talk to somebody above them. You follow the protocols, you stay till 7 or whenever the boss leaves is when you get to leave. There's some of those workplace norms that are will be the same across regions. So despite having different labels, the behaviors are pretty common. Similarly, as we see Gen Z coming into the workforce, they are pushing boundaries and creating some boundaries in in some new ways. So they're saying you can email me at any time of day you'd like to, but I'm not going to answer it if it's after 5 o'clock. That's something, baby boomers are saying, well, what do you mean? That's not how we work around here. So there are some very realistic and functional differences in the way people are working and the way they expect to work. Um, Kudos on this big birthday coming up. Absolutely love that, and thank you for sharing that. The workforce positioning. Let's talk a little bit about this. So the silent generation, or the traditionalists, as they're sometimes called, are the oldest generation still in the workforce. Most of those folks, if they are still working, are doing it because they have to, although many are doing it because they want to. My dad is 83 and probably will not stop teaching until he can't anymore. He said he'd just be bored to tears if he quit working. And so there are some people that are doing that they're working by choice, but unfortunately, for many traditionalists and certainly baby boomers, some of the financial crises over the last 20 years really created a financial position for them that they were not able to retire when they had expected to. And the savings or the stocks that they had accumulated to try to create a retirement pipeline for themselves just is not available anymore. And so many of them are working past the time that they had intended to. Um, the baby boomers, at least in the US, are about 20% of the workforce now, and sometimes some less in some countries as well, depending on the demographic shifts. Gen Xers are now often the senior leaders, the becoming the elder people in many of their organizations. And they were certainly deemed as the slacker generation, and there are lots of memes and funny things about how Gen X is portrayed, but it has really been the backbone of the workforce for many years. Demographically, Gen X was a smaller generation, and so there are fewer people in terms of the birth years of Gen X. Um, but they have been the sort of kind of workhorses. They grew up in the last bits of the corporate ladder when there was a corporate ladder still left to climb. And yet they are also seeing the new generation of gig work and completely different shift in the way we're thinking about work. Millennials, when I first started this work 15 years ago, millennials, all the millennials are coming. What are we going to do? They're so different. Oh no. In retrospect, millennials were not that much different from the Gen Xers. There was a perception of a huge difference, and they certainly did usher in a notion in many organizations of purpose-based work in a way that I think a lot of older workers didn't think about. I've spent many years helping banking executives understand that it's actually not a bad thing to want to find purpose in your job. That's something that, what's wrong with the rest of us? Was kind of the question that I would ask when I'd hear, grumbly older worker, these young people, they just want, they want purpose. Like, yeah, what's wrong with the rest of us? Like, we're asking the wrong questions here. And I think I would challenge us to similarly ask the same questions about Gen Z. So some of the big complaints you see, I mean, the headlines right now are all about what Gen Z doesn't want to do what they're not doing, where their gaps are, where they're broken, where they're not, they're not. And what we're missing is what they are. And one of the things that they are doing is setting some boundaries that most of us didn't have the comfort, safety, or even understanding that we could set. I mean, I probably worked every weekend from 2020 through 2022. And I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I mean, I probably thought I was going to get fired. I wouldn't get promoted. I wouldn't get whatever the thing was. But I certainly didn't feel comfortable saying no. And some of what we're seeing from Gen Z is they're saying, you know what? I'm happy to work on this project. I will give it 100% between my hours, in my hours of working, which are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I'll give it everything I've got in those hours. And you're welcome to email me afterwards, and I will respond the next day during business hours. And I'm seeing a lot of older folks interpret that as lack of grit, lack of willingness to work hard. They're sort of seeing it as something missing rather than something that I certainly wish we could all embrace more to have some boundaries and some guardrails around our working habits, our working behaviors. I'm a recovering workaholic, but that's probably just because I didn't know how to set boundaries in my younger years. Gen Alpha is going to be a real they're going to be a real challenge. It is a completely different generation. These are the kids that are still in school today. And, we are hearing and seeing from public school teachers and I mean, teachers all around that there's some real differences in the way kids are interacting now. That's a whole other session. We could talk about the impact of devices, both on our own brains and on our kids' brains. Certainly, there is a continued reduction in or an increase in the need for immediate gratification and that satisfaction seeking. There are studies about lowered reading scores and reading proficiency that's been dropping year over year. I mean, there's some truly concerning things, but we will need to pay attention as Gen Alpha enters the workforce, and they're going to be looking for something completely different. We got a little bit of time to think about Gen Z and how to support them in a meaningful way. They also fundamentally experience different things in their formative years. I mean, for us, the pandemic, we were adults already. And think about how hard the pandemic was. These kids experience this in their teenage years, in their formative years, the moments when your brain is literally trying to form the connections that place you in the world, that figure out where do I fit in society? What is right and wrong? What are the rules? What do I follow and what do I not? How do I fit in with these people around me? And all of those kind of brain functions are solidifying in those years that they were isolated. They were completely cut off from what they had known before. They had experiences that none of us could help them through because we certainly hadn't experienced it. And and they're so truly dealing with things when people say, "Oh, it's always been that way." Well, kinda, but they truly like some of it, like every new generation has slang. Every new generation has music that we don't like or that whatever, right? There are always those things, but this is fundamentally different. To your point, I did a webinar with some college students, and one of the young women said that all of her internships had been done during the pandemic. And so when she went to her first office job, she asked somebody if she was allowed to go to the bathroom anytime she needed to. Because and like, it took me aback. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much more foundational than we even realized. Because the last time this young woman had been in a room with people, she was in a classroom in which she had to raise her hand and ask a teacher if she was allowed to go to the restroom. And that teacher had the power to decide yes or no. So then she works online for a couple of years and then walks into a corporate office and she's sitting in a cubicle looking around going like, am I just allowed to get up and do whatever I want to? And it was such a stark realization of just how different their experiences have been and how we need to think differently about preparing them. So all these companies, Gen Z doesn't have what we need. Gen Z doesn't know how to work. No kidding. No kidding. I mean, I didn't know how to send an email when I was 20. I had to learn that the hard way, right? I mean, you learn it by you screw a bunch of stuff up and you make a bunch of mistakes. We have often attributed that to learning, right? You learn by making mistakes, and in many ways, one does. On the other hand, we, particularly as women, can do better to hand down knowledge to our successors. And they don't have to suffer in the same way that we will. Believe me, they will have plenty of their own suffering, right? The world will bring plenty of that to them. But we don't have to exacerbate that by gatekeeping knowledge, by refusing to support and train them, by treating them as if they are lesser than simply because they don't have the knowledge yet. Like there's some really damaging ways that our biases and perceptions um, can exist. And those myths, I don't know about y'all. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, but I definitely have moments where I feel like, oh my gosh, I can't figure out this technology. And then I push through it, and eventually, most of the time, I figure it out. Sometimes I gotta call my business partner or ask AI for some help. But eventually, I can learn how to do the thing. My dad at 83 is just as tech savvy as people half his age. So, those perceptions are inaccurate. The first time my boss calls me that kid, maybe I can laugh it off. The second time your boss, that young lady, that kid, now you're actually undermining my authority in my job. Now you're making people see me differently because you're acting as if I don't have adequate knowledge. And if you didn't think I did, maybe you shouldn't have hired me, right? So don't undermine me in that way. Some of these biases feel subtle, but can create really powerful negative impact for people. Um, so I just wanted to share a couple thoughts about knowledge transfer and how we can be intentional about sharing knowledge across generations. And there are certainly any number of ways in more formal programs that we can create knowledge transfer intentionally. And that's part of the work that I do through Tapestry Partner Solutions is really setting up uh, how we make a plan to share knowledge from roles that are unique, this or unicorn roles, into uh, into some organizational business continuity planning and some materials that will actually help the organization last over time. But in much more informal ways, there are whether it's a skill exchange program, back in the day when I first started in financial services 25 years ago, we used to have what job shadowing programs. Does anybody remember that sort of? I don't know if anybody worked corporate, but that's kind of right. Job shadowing was a thing, and you'd go. Sometimes it was just a couple days. Sometimes it was more programmatic, and you'd spend a month or two working in some other department to go learn what the other department's doing, and then you go back to your regular job. There are a lot of different ways that you can do that, but being intentional, we need to be intentional about how we are sharing that knowledge and skills across. Um, One of my favorite things to do. So at Bank of America in 2012, we launched the Intergenerational Employee Network and grew that. That is now an employee resource group that has more than 25,000 members worldwide and people really focusing on this. One of the most fun things that we did was a cross-generational panel. And so we'd take different topics like AI or something like that, and we'd have a boomer, a Gen Xer, a millennial, and a Gen Z, all giving perspectives on this particular topic. Sometimes we do things like as vague or broad as perceptions of leadership. And what do you think about, when you say leaders or managers, what does that connote for you and what are your expectations there? So having those cross-generational panels or conversations, obviously one is not an island. I don't speak for all Gen Xers. You wouldn't speak for all millennials or all boomers, but it is a valuable way to see multiple different perspectives at one time. Um, and then, I am a huge fan of what we call reverse or reciprocal mentoring. And technically, we know that good mentoring should be go both ways. I mean, we should both get something out of the relationship. But traditionally, it's not set up that way, right? It's set up so that the senior person tells the junior person stuff. They learn, they give them knowledge, and the junior person absorbs it and is so grateful for everything that they've learned. A better relationship is one in which both partners are coming in curious. The senior leader is saying, you know what? I've been talking to the same people for a long time. I've heard a lot of the same ideas. I want something new. What do you think about this? What's your perspective? Because you haven't dealt with this challenge yet. And where there's a true kind of intentional cross sharing of knowledge. And that's one of the other things that I work with organizations to do is, some people for some orgs, it is taking their existing mentoring program and just tweaking it a little bit, just a couple little adjustments to ensure that we're getting that cross sharing. For some, it's implementing something totally new that they haven't done. Um, so I do want to put a plug in for those of you that work with organizations that have employee resource groups. ERGs can be an incredible path to support employee engagement, skill building, knowledge transfer, etc. We built, as I mentioned, an intergenerational group. I work with many organizations that have like a new professionals group. Sometimes they call one's got a kind of silver sneakers version of the of a group that is for their more tenured employees. So, based on workforce demographics, some are better than others for certain companies, depending on what your specific workforce challenge may be. If you've got a really heavy boomer workforce, you may not need an employee resource group, but you do need some knowledge transfer programs because they're going to leave and you're going to lose all that knowledge. Um, and then the last thing I'll leave you with, and then would love to open up for discussion and see what's on your mind. There is a sense of urgency around this. My favorite thing to say is that we could continue to admire the problem for a while, or we could deal with it now. You'll hear these conversations coming up in what is usually called future workforce conversations, right? Or the future of workforce. This is right now. This is happening right now. These challenges they've been happening for a couple of years. And the organizations that address this sooner rather than later will capture the top talent of incoming generations. They'll retain their existing talent, and they will be able to operate in a different way. I mean, it's truly a marketplace advantage to be able to have that kind of knowledge share. So that is, you can hear this is one of my favorite topics. I could spend all day with y'all talking about this, but I will pause. Would love to hear, like, what did this spark for you? Good, bad, and ugly. Like, what does this make you think of? And what else can we work on together in this conversation?
Hi Anna, it's Carla. I just
Hey, it's
wanted
great
to
to meet you.
hello. I just wanted to say I'm here in the UK, based in London. So I really resonated with everything you said. So even across the pond, this is still exactly the same. I think a lot of it as well is industry based here, certainly in the UK. So I work a lot within the construction industry as well. So that is just an industry that is just consistently the same, and it's very antiquated and trying to get them up to where they're going. And you're completely right, because they are now seeing such a gap in skills, because they are not teaching the younger generation. It's get up and get on with it, and let's just go. And you're quite right, the younger generation here are kicking back and saying, well, why do we have to work at that level? And I agree with them, and I kind of do say to them, I do agree with you, because now you guys have actually built us some lovely software to take all this lovely administration away from us, to be able to not have to work those hours. So I do think that there is a generation, certainly I'm a Gen X, so there is a lot of my generation where I do actually have to talk to the leadership team and say, you've got to appreciate these young ones coming up now, because they are solving the problems that you guys have just been continuously doing for a very long time, and you have to take that on board. But similarly, I also say to the younger generation, this generation, because I'm in sales, so I train sales teams. So when I'm getting people
Ah,
to try and sell,
yeah.
which are the younger generation, which is a very different landscape now, I do have to kind of say to them, right, you're talking to people that used to walk down to a bank with cash or a check and pay it in. And they used to have to
Yes.
go to the post office and they used to have to then wait to a Saturday to go and do something else. I said, so you've got to appreciate why this generation is not in a rush to do anything, that whilst they've made
Yeah.
it easy, because we've survived without it. Whilst it's been a lot harder, we have survived without it. So when I like say to people, look, we're all older than Google. We survived. We're good. We can read a map. We can get anywhere. The second you say that to them, they're like, oh, and it's just bridging that gap. So that's what I like, with what you're doing. It's just really, really bridging that gap both ways. And I do think if it's not done properly, like onboarding, I never see companies onboard anymore. It's a tick. It's just a tick. Tick. Yeah, we've said hello. Yeah, we've introduced. Yeah, we've done. That's not onboarding.
It's so my 19 year I've got the perfect like case study at home because my 19-year-old still lives with me. And so we have lots of pointed conversations. And she said to me one day, Mom, I thought that an entry level job meant they would actually teach me how to do the job.
Who
Novel,
thought?
right?
What an idea.
Like what that's a novel idea. And I like it really we do have to get more foundational in what we're teaching in those ways of working. It's the back to basics. How do you send an email to your superior?
Yeah.
Whether or not we think, and it's also, Carla, the other thing I think about is like, should we have to? It doesn't really matter whether we should, like, do we want to? Should we have to? It doesn't, like, none of that matters,
Yeah.
right?
Let's get rid
It's
of the
sort of
noise.
beside the point.
Yeah, and it's that hierarchy as well. It's like when we used to join a company, you had to work your way up. You had to kind of get to that floor before you were allowed to talk to anybody, and then get to the next floor before you're allowed to talk to anybody. But this generation coming in, it's like, talk to everybody. You're all human, aren't you? And it's like, yeah, it's. I really do like this this generation for coming up and actually highlighting that. But I do also think when you touched on the work ethics, I find here that when we're employing people here or companies are employing sales teams, it is can this role fit into my life? And I must admit, I sit there and admire it. I do sit there and
I
admire it
wish I
from them.
had some of that in my
Oh,
younger
wouldn't you?
years, right? That's
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you because it really resonated with a lot of things that I'm just sat here going, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I completely agree with you, both with Anna and Carla, because I do work with a lot of people, but I also teach at a university and college level as well. And a lot of the times, like Anna, when you said your 19-year-old thought like the first job or even the onboarding that you said, Carla, like it's one of these things that a lot of companies nowadays expect you to walk in, to know what you're doing. Like entry level positions have like a 5-year sort of requirement, which is like, how are you going to get that experience without necessarily, actually be given the chance? So and a lot of the things that you were saying, like absolutely, Anna, like you're so right on. It's literally, yeah, I don't think the problem is the generations or the work ethic or anything like that. And it's like we are more connected. So now we have to, like to your point, we need to be responding 24/7. So it's not instead of actually helping us, it's working against us. Like the number of people that I've seen on a beach with their laptop, and I'm like, are you supposed to be working or are you on PTO or on holidays? Like what's happening? I'm not
Right.
really clear.
No, I get that. And I've definitely been guilty of that work-life balance, like the flexible work can sometimes really mess up the separation. Like I felt for many years it felt like a privilege to be able to work from wherever I needed to, and particularly as a single parent it was, and it allowed me to raise my daughter the way that I needed to, but also I never turned it off. I was always working everywhere because I could be working everywhere. So, but I had no boundaries. I was a squishy person. So I had no boundaries and no ability to say no or turn it off. So that's the other thing I love about this generation. Love it. I
Marie
so thank you. I
asked,
love the hand raise function. Thank y'all for doing that.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning. I'm sorry I couldn't turn on my camera earlier. I didn't have clothes on, but I'm clean. I'm so glad you can't smell over Zoom. I was dressing, so that's why my hair is wet. Anna, what a fantastic presentation, an informative presentation. I think the work of intergenerational awareness is huge. I think it's equally important as the rest of the diversity. I see it as part of diversity conversation, diversity of generations in the workforce and organizations. And yes, I mean, I could say 10,000 things, but I'll pick a couple of them. The first one, I am based in San Antonio, Texas. My virtual background is in beautiful downtown San Antonio. Come visit. It's beautiful here. But I was born and raised in Mexico, and I am a geriatric millennial born in 1980. Si Pele, we're both 45. So we're, like between the Gen Xers, my siblings are like pure Gen Xers, born in the 70s. And then I was born with a microwave in 1980. And I was exposed to technology and those big floppies in sixth grade in Mexico, right? So absolutely, I grew up with technology, and and now I'm old as gold. I tell my children, he's like, Mom, you're old as gold, mija. It's good to be old. And so something I noticed is a big difference growing up in another country, and it's next door. And Mexican culture is, thanks to the internet, which is a huge component of what the conversation we're having. A lot of people are familiar with the Mexican culture, but something that still throws me off after, like, I don't want to count, almost 30 years that I moved to this country. I mean, as a teenager when I moved for college, is that in English, in American English, and Carla, I don't really know in the UK, so please teach me. When it comes to college students, they're called kids. And
Mm,
it throws me off because in Spanish, we never called estudiantes de universidad niños, right? We never call them kids. Do I
mm,
agree as a 45-year-old single mother of a 12 and an almost 10-year-old that college students are kids? Absolutely. But I don't think it's positive or productive to refer them as college kids, or even once they graduated from college, right? They are professionals. They should be, and they're all, I'm just gonna say, they all, by the time they start college, they all have pubic hair. So technically they're not kids, right? So I do think that we have, I don't know, it's us older people wanting to remain young because we have this social construct of, like, it's not good to age, which that's another thing that over a glass of wine after five that I would love to philosophize on, like, what's wrong with getting older, and what's going to happen? We're not going to have abuelitas and the elders anymore. Like, we're not going to have wise old people in society. Like, everyone is supposed to be on Botox and BBLs and looking like this with weenies on your lips. Like, what's happening? Like, am I on crack? you know so I think it starts even with the power of language, right? Like, I am my interns, I'm blessed to work with interns. I work with Gen Z's very well, but of course I do pull my hair, and I do, like, feel like I'm on crack, once a week when working with my Gen Zs. But to your point, Anna, I couldn't agree more. I think it's about boundaries, and I think it's difficult for us, the adults, and I'm so glad to be in a room full of women, because that's another conversation over a glass of wine. I think it would be very different if we had a majority of men in the room having this conversation, because it's us who take care of the elderly and children, and who need that flexibility at the workplace, that guys don't have to worry about it because they have wives, right? So I think that's another component of the conversation, that the younger Gen Zs have grown up watching, these dynamics, and they do a much better job at drawing boundaries. And I think I'm gonna generalize, as it is in generational conversation. I think a lot of Gen Xers in power, to your point, Anna, we have a lot of leaders, Gen Xers now in leadership positions. And I was expecting a little more from the Atari generation, but they're still, like, following the same baby boomer, like, I'm going to work you to death. And, in order to be successful, you have to have worked 60 hours per week and be a slave. And that's what it takes. But the reality reality is not true. It was never true to those for those few privileged male leaders that were promoted and given opportunities when they were 26 and 27. They were given, managerial positions, and they started growing very quickly versus us women or immigrants or minorities and around the world. I'm sure we can phrase it correctly, right? Some of us, we had to work our way up, right? So when I joined the workforce after college, I was 21 and I had a woman in her 60s tell me as my onboarding, the first year of employment, you shut up and you don't say anything and you listen. And that was my onboarding. Don't talk, go to meetings, take
Wow.
notes. You ask me, you
Oh,
ask in one-on-one, but it's the first full year is onboarding. That's in a small nonprofit that had no money and paid me 24K. And I thought I was going to be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with 24K? So much money. What am I going to do with all this money? That was my onboarding. But at the same time, I was a young person hired in that nonprofit that knew how to use technology. But I wasn't put in a pedestal as a geriatric millennial. I still got the treatment of you're the youngest, you're the newest, and you get to clean the fridge and you get to shut up for the first year. So now we no longer
Mm.
do those dictator type, hopefully. To your point, Carl, I think industries and sectors, there's huge differences, massive differences. So again, generalizations are challenging. But at the same time, now that, okay, we're treating everyone with respect as we should, regardless of your age and experience, and we're all lives are valuable no matter what, right? And people bring talent, but now older people, now we're feeling like, oh, I'm too old, oh, I need to botox to be taken seriously. Like only 15 years ago, which is yesterday, right? Like 20 years ago, it's not that long ago. I remember it like it was yesterday, right? I was the contrary. Younger people had to, like, you learn, right? You had that more humbling attitude that you're an entry level professional. You're young in your career, right? And now where is that? So that's where I'm confused, right? Like I hear different messages, contradictory messages from I guess from different voices. So thank you for hearing this monologue. I'll shut that.
thank you,
That was
Marisa.
excellent. That was so good.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
Laura, I
I'm
think,
gonna take you to some
yeah.
events with me too. You got some
You
great catchphrases.
so have to come to the
Yes.
UK and educate this lawyer.
I'll be there tomorrow, Carla.
You,
Please, please come.
honestly, because you
Yes.
are right, because this older generation that have been treating this young generation, I think a lot of it is they're probably a little bit scared and don't like to say so because they've been in a very authoritarian position for such a long time, and then suddenly there's this younger generation coming in that are just whipping around them completely, and that's why I think sometimes they hold them where they need them to be because it's reflecting on their insecurities. And I've noticed that a lot because we still have a generation that is sat in corporate here and there's no diversity. And you just, as soon as I see a company to work with and there's no diversity, I'm like, I'm out of here because I know what this is going to go down as.
Yeah. Yes, we still
Mm,
have a lot of that.
we do.
Okay, Laura, we're going to finish with you and then we're going to do a quick round robin just to do introductions really quick before we go. This is amazing. Fantastic discussion. Love this. Thank you, Anna. This was the perfect topic. All right, Laura.
What that that's a little bit tough to follow. Marisa was that was amazing. I still have the visual about the what did you call it? The hot dog lips or
Hot
whatever
dogs
you
on the
said.
lips. That was
Yeah,
perfect.
that was anyway, so I'm back here laughing. Thank God for the mute button. That was great. Well, actually, mine isn't quite as my thought to all of this wasn't quite as hilarious, but it was that when my experience as a CHRO, I was kind of caught in the middle of all of this. So a lot of what you covered, Anna, was so relevant because I had folks working for me, and everyone that's ever worked for me, ever since I started leading people 20 plus years ago, I always told them, if you want to know how to take my job, I'll show you. I will show you how to steal my job. Because I wanted people to learn. I wanted to find out what their strengths are, what they wanted to do, and so on and so forth. And I'll be darned, in the last situation that I was in, my previous employer, not only could I not get the younger generation to take my job or even be interested in it, and I'm the head of people. And I mean, they've got the sneak peek behind the curtain. They know what we all make. They know all these other things. That was not an incentive. They were watching because the person that I reported to was, kind of old school in that you work 60 hours a week, you do this, you do that, and I was doing it. I was in a situation where we were 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had, you know, four employees, four staff, but 850 employees. So on. I was always on. And so I mean, thankfully I had long tenure. These people enjoyed working for me, but not a one of them wanted to take my job. On the flip
Yeah.
side of that, so I had it coming and going. On the flip side of that, my boss was very, very hesitant to do succession planning. And so here I am. I'm like, okay, I can't get anybody to step into my role, and I can't get her to, develop the next group of people, or, a pool, some sort of candidate pool, to take her role. So I got to see it kind of from both sides. So, I would always ask my staff, I'm like, what am I doing that I don't make this job look very sexy? I know what it was. It was because I was working 60 hours, 50, 60 hours a week, and nobody wanted it. So it's a very interesting, such a relevant point you bring up, but it's very interesting because you've got those who don't want to let go, and then you've got those who don't want to grab on. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting that you brought it up that way, Anna. So thank you.
Really appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, that's just an untenable position to be in. Yeah. So thank you for that. That is exactly why I'm doing this work. Because for people, you needed me like 5 years ago, whenever that role was.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a wonderful conversation. Thank y'all so much.
Yes, thank you guys, everyone. This has been fantastic. I love when we can just have conversation and have topics that we can actually discuss and come together on. So, we're gonna leave just the last few minutes to do quick introductions. And so feel free to give you like a 30, 45 second round robin, introduce yourself, where you're at, what you do. And if you have not shared your contact information, please do that because we always jump into side conversations and take this chat offline. So please do that with us. And then please come back with us next month because Marissa, I'm inviting you to be the presenter. Let's talk about a topic. All right, let's get started. Carla, let's start with you.
So, if you haven't guessed already, I'm in the UK, the UK accent. So, I have been selling for a very long time. So, I started off as the typical telesales marketer right back in the day where it was, just pick that phone up, put up and shut up, the standard training that you got. But then I kind of grew through that. So to cut a long story short, I ended up now putting teams into companies, onboarding, doing everything I need to do. So now I consult. I run my own consultancy firm, What Next Consultancy, and really just try and help leadership understand how to treat people, treat them like human beings, treat how to onboard them, treat them well enough, train them well enough to stay. It's like the Richard Branson thing, and treat them well, train them well enough to be very good, but treat them well enough to stay. I think it's a philosophy I've always kind of want to continue with. And I just want to say this has just been probably one of the best conversations I've had so far this week. It's great. I'm so glad I jumped on.
Yay, thank you. Emily Elizabeth Walker, thanks for the camera. Can you?
My
Perfect.
my name is Emily Landis Walker. I don't know why it comes up as Elizabeth, but whatever. Says I'm in safe driving mode. Is my video stopped? Can you guys hear me or no?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, I don't know why my video stopped, but it says my video is stopped. Okay, well, hey ho. I'm going to be 70 in July, and it's kind of a big deal. I'm working still. I'm in blockchain and crypto. I'm doing business continuity for blockchain and crypto companies because I wrote the U.S. National Standards for Emergency Preparedness for the private sector when I was on the 9/11 Commission. I'm a 9/11 survivor. And I was on the commission. I wrote the chapter Heroism and Horror of the 9/11 Commission report. And none of the companies had any idea what they do to be prepared for something like that. Well, it doesn't matter if it's a hurricane, earthquake, a fire, or your own screw up. You have to have a plan, you have to practice it. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years in blockchain and crypto. And I just came back from London. I spoke last week at a digital conference in London. I'm British and American, and I'm trying to get on boards. So if anybody finds any boards that would be good, that would be great as well. But that's me, and I really enjoyed the group and the conversation. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Or Emily, sorry.
That's
Elizabeth
okay.
Carrillo. We'll go with you next.
Yes, I'm here. So thank you very much. Thank you, Anna. I mean, it's a great presentation. I mean, I really appreciate to have this global overview. And it remind me a lot of things, essentially my grandson, so, which I don't understand really because his connection, internet connection is very, very hard. So yes, I am a former CPA. I work 20 years also for European Commission, for United Nations, and now I try to help non-profit sector to structure themselves. I am also a psychologist. I am a student in psychology too. I am transpersonal coach, and I try to learn a lot because we have a lot of things to learn. I think because I was thinking to your father, Anna. I mean, we have this notion of meaning in our work, in our job, is the reason why we don't want to stop. I mean, because working is a sort of an answering to a call. I mean, we have to do something for society, and we have to give back something. I mean, because we receive a lot of things, so we need to give back this under the form of transmission or learning. I'm volunteer for a lot of non-profit organization. I am a faculty members of Africa Link, which is a non-profit for younger African people. I mean, it's a sort of receiving and giving. I don't know if I'm clear, but something like
Yeah.
this. So thank you very
Thank
much
you.
again for this presentation and to all of you to be here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Lena.
Oh, hello everyone. So this is like literally my very first meeting and interaction with Global
Welcome.
Chamber. And oh my goodness, Anna, that was so powerful. I absolutely loved everything that you said. Like your presentation was so good. Just so many truths. And then Carla, and then there was another lady, I think it's Marissa. It was just like I genuinely I feel like the standard is really high for all my other global um, meetings because I this is like you've just set such an amazing standard, which I absolutely love. So in terms of what I do, I work with clients from all around the world, and I help them create their marketing strategies, specifically their digital marketing strategies, and teach them how to execute them. So not just create a plan that you don't really know what to do with. It's more about, how do Facebook ads or Instagram ads or LinkedIn or Google, how do they actually work? How can you make sure that you're not just posting and hoping that something will happen, that you will actually get results? So that's really what I do. And I've worked with some of the largest advertisers from all around the world. So I've worked with like Google and Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook and Instagram. And I've also worked with companies that haven't even been formed yet, that is just an idea in someone's head. And I also do teach as well, both at the university and with colleges. So I do a number of different things. And I completely, like Anna, I feel like, everybody tells me I'm a workaholic, and I'm like, I do what I love. Like, what's the problem with that? Like, I think it would be a problem if I didn't enjoy it. If somebody was forcing me to do something I didn't enjoy, I think that's very, very very different. So thank you so much. I feel like this was such an amazing like group of women. So congratulations to all of you, and I can't wait to meet you and get to know you more over the next coming weeks.
Thank you. Thank you, Lena, and welcome to the Global Chamber. I'm glad this was your first meeting. Thank you. Laura.
So I'm Laura Fredrickson. As I mentioned, I was in as a CHRO for over 20 years. I recently left and I started Auravia HR, and that is a company. Auravia HR is a company that is a CHRO advisory, but I'm one of the strange outliers in HR where I actually love technology and I've been involved in it for also over 20 years. So one of the things that I offer and that I'm leaning into quite a bit, especially right now, is helping companies with assessing their HR technology, their AI, HR tech stack, all of that, and their people strategy and aligning both of those things with the business. So doing a business people HR tech strategy alignment, and I'm located here in Arizona. So very nice to meet you all. You guys were great. This was a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Marisa.
Super quick, because I know we're at time. My name is Marisa Ortiz. I pronounce it in Spanish, but you can pronounce it in any other language, and I know it's me. And I'm based in San Antonio, Texas. My company is called Intercultural Talent. We customize and facilitate training workshops. So Laura, and Anna, I mean, we're all very aligned. I'm a former HR employee of many, many years, a facilitator, a trainer that became a mother and tried self-employment because I just wanted to be with my child. And here I am, 10 years later, I'm still self-employed. And we've been blessed to serve over 45 countries remotely. And, several countries of course, the US and Mexico, because Mexico is very close to us. We're very close to the border. We also work in Espanol. And we have served in Latin Europe and Asia in person. So we are happy to fly wherever we are invited to facilitate or customize workshops. And we also offer, of course, talent development consulting. That is our preference, to be able to join the conversations early enough with leaders to come up with the best talent development solutions when it comes to training and equipping the workforce and teams, but also work with entrepreneurs, pretty much anyone who loves learning. So Elizabeth, I very much resonated when you said, well, I'm still learning. Isn't that what we do in life? Isn't that what life is all about? This big school. So I'm right there with you. I am a teacher. I'm a facilitator. We don't call ourselves teachers. We're facilitators because I am a lifelong learner. But please connect on LinkedIn. I would love to continue to be in touch. And of course, we'll run into each other in other meetings, but hopefully we can have one-on-ones. My month of May is crazy because I have kids and field trips and graduations and clients need attention too. But then my summer will even out and I'll have a lot more time for one-on-ones over some good coffee. Ladies, you are all phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marisa. And I'm gonna let you go, and then I'll do a quick goodbye. And thank you guys for hanging on. Thank you. And oh, okay. I think
I think
Anna
everybody
left.
just went.
Yeah. All
Great
right.
talk, though.
Well,
Great
ladies,
talk.
yeah,
Disappear.
ladies,
Thoroughly enjoyed that.
thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
No
And
worries.
please hope to see you next month. All right. Bye.
Have a good
Bye.
week. Bye.
Thank you again.